Captain Jake Morrison sat in his small fighter ship far from Earth. He was on patrol duty, checking the empty space around the solar system. It was boring work, but someone had to do it. The stars looked the same as always, cold and distant. Jake had been a pilot for 10 years. He knew every inch of space around Earth and Mars. Nothing ever happened out here. The most exciting thing was usually a broken satellite or space junk floating by. He sipped his coffee and looked at the radar. Screen. Everything was normal. Then the screen started beeping. Jake sat up straight and looked closer. There were dots on the screen. Big dots. More dots than he had ever seen before. They were coming from the direction of deep space, moving fast toward Earth. What the hell? Jake said to himself. He checked his instruments again. The dots were getting bigger. They were ships, but not human ships. These were massive, bigger than anything humans had ever built. Jake grabbed his radio. Control, this is Morrison. I have unknown contacts approaching. The solar system. Many contacts. They're huge. The voice from Earth Control sounded tired. Morrison, check your equipment. Are you sure it's not a malfunction? Jake looked at his screen again. Now there were hundreds of dots. They were slowing down, taking positions around the outer edge of the solar system. Each ship was the size of a city. Control, this is not a malfunction. We have visitors. Big ones. You need to see this. Back on Earth, Admiral Lisa Carter was having a bad day. Budget meetings, personnel reports, and broken equipment. She commanded the Earth Defense Force, but there was never much to defend against. Space was empty and peaceful. Her assistant knocked on her door. Admiral, we have Captain Morrison on priority channel. He says it's urgent. Lisa sighed. Morrison was a good pilot, but he sometimes got excited about space rocks. Put him through. Morrison's voice crackled through the speaker. Admiral, you need to alert the fleet. We have unknown ships entering our space. Hundreds of them. They're not human. Lisa felt her stomach drop. Are you certain, Captain? Yes, ma'am. They're taking positions around the solar system. I've never seen anything like them. They're enormous. Lisa stood up quickly. Get me a direct link to Morrison's sensors. I want to see what he's seeing. The data came through in seconds. Lisa stared at her screen in disbelief. The ships were real. They were alien. And there were thousands of them. Sound General Alert, Lisa ordered. Get me the President on the line. And wake up everyone in the Defense Command. We have a situation. Dr. Kevin Walsh was sleeping when his phone rang. He was the head of the language department at the Global Research Institute. People only called him in the middle of the night when something was very wrong. Dr. Walsh, this is Admiral Carter. We need you at Defense Command immediately. We have first contact with an alien species. Kevin was suddenly wide awake. Are you serious? Dead serious? They're here, above Earth, and they're trying to communicate. Kevin grabbed his clothes and ran to his car. He had studied alien languages his whole life, but they were all theoretical. No one had ever actually met aliens before. His hands shook as he drove to the military base. At Defense Command, the main screen showed the alien fleet. The ships were dark and angular, covered in strange symbols. They looked like weapons, built for war. Dr. Walsh, thank God you're here. Admiral Carter said. We received a transmission 5 minutes ago. We need to know what they're saying. Kevin sat down at a computer and put on headphones. The alien message was playing on repeat. It was a series of sounds, clicks, and tones. Unlike anything human. But there was a pattern to it. There was meaning. Kevin worked for 2 hours, using every computer program and language theory he knew. Slowly, the message became clear. When he understood what it said, his face went pale. Admiral, Kevin said quietly, I think I know what they're saying. What is it? Kevin looked at the screen showing the alien fleet. They're giving us an ultimatum. They say we have 72 hours to surrender our planet. If we don't, they will destroy us. The room went silent. Everyone stared at the alien ships on the screen. The ships that could destroy Earth without breaking. A sweat. Commander Amy Brooks was on the moon, commanding the lunar defense platform. She had the best view of the alien fleet. The ships were beautiful in a terrifying way. They moved through space like sharks through water. Amy counted the ships. There were over 3,000 of them. Earth's entire military had maybe 200 ships, and most of those were small fighters. The aliens could probably destroy Earth's military in minutes. She called Earth. Admiral Carter, this is Brooks. I'm looking at the alien fleet from the moon. We're in trouble. Big trouble. How bad is it, Commander? Amy looked at the alien ships again. They were positioning themselves around Earth, like a net. Ma'am, if they want to destroy us, there's nothing we can do to stop them. Our weapons are toys compared to their ships. Admiral Carter was quiet for a long moment. Understood, Commander. Hold your position and keep watching them. Let me know if they make any moves. Amy ended the call and looked at Earth below. The blue planet looked so small and helpless, surrounded by the alien fleet. She thought about her family down there. Her parents, her sister, her nephew who was only 5 years old. The aliens had given Earth 72 hours to surrender. Amy wondered, what would happen when the time was up? Would humanity fight? Would they surrender? Or was there another option? Deep in the military bunkers beneath Colorado, General Paul Martinez was reading classified files. Files that had been locked away for over 100 years. Files that contained humanity's darkest secrets. Martinez had been a soldier his whole life. He had fought in wars, seen terrible things, done terrible things. But he had never seen anything like what was in these files. The files contained records of every war humanity had ever fought, every weapon they had ever built, every cruel thing they had ever done to each other. The files painted a picture of a species that was violent, unpredictable, and absolutely ruthless. Most alien species had achieved peace before they reached the stars. They had learned to work together, to solve problems without violence. Humanity was different. Humans had invented nuclear weapons before they had invented space travel. They had created biological weapons before they had cured cancer. Martinez closed the files and looked at the reports coming in from space. The aliens thought they were dealing with a normal species, a species that would surrender when faced with overwhelming force. They were wrong. Martinez picked up his secure phone and called Admiral Carter. Lisa, we need to talk. I have something the aliens need to know about us. What is it, Paul? They think we're like every other species they've conquered. They think we'll surrender when we see their fleet. Won't we? Martinez looked at the classified files again. No, Lisa, we won't, and they need to understand why. Get me a meeting with the President and the Defense Council. It's time to show these aliens what humanity really is. The alien fleet waited in space around Earth. They had given their ultimatum. In 72 hours, they expected humanity to surrender. They had done this thousands of times before with other species. It always ended the same way, but they had never encountered a species like humanity before. They had never met a species they preferred death to slavery. They had never faced a species that had spent its entire history learning new ways to kill. The aliens were about to get an education about humanity, and it was going to be a lesson they would never forget. General Paul Martinez walked into the emergency meeting room deep underground. The president was there, along with the top military leaders and scientists. Everyone looked scared and confused. They had never faced anything like this before. Gentlemen, ladies, Martinez said as he set down a thick folder on the table. The aliens have given us 72 hours to surrender. They think we're like every other species they've conquered. They're wrong. President William Hayes looked tired. He had been president for only 6 months, and now he was facing the end of the world. General, what do you mean they're wrong? Martinez opened the folder. Inside were hundreds of documents, photos, and reports. All of them were marked top secret and classified. Some were over 100 years old. Sir, these files contain the complete history of human warfare. Every war we've fought, every weapon we've created, every cruel thing we've done to each other. Most species achieve peace before they reach space. We're different. Lieutenant Colonel Susan Baker, Martinez's assistant, began handing out copies of the documents. The people in the room read them with growing horror. Pictures of nuclear explosions, chemical weapons, mass graves, and destroyed cities. My God, whispered Defense Secretary Karen Moore. This is what we've done to ourselves? Yes, ma'am, Martinez replied. While other species were learning to cooperate, we were learning to kill. We invented weapons that could destroy entire continents. We created diseases that could wipe out millions. We built bombs that could crack the planet in half. Dr. Peter Collins, the military historian, stood up. He was an old man who had spent his life studying wars. The general is right. Every other species the aliens have conquered reached space through cooperation and peace. They solved their problems by working together. We're the only species that invented orbital bombardment before we invented orbital habitats. The room was quiet. Everyone was trying to understand what this meant. So what are you saying? President Hayes asked. That we're more violent than other species? Not more violent, sir, Martinez said. More experienced at violence. We've spent 10,000 years learning how to kill each other efficiently. We've turned warfare into an art form. We've created weapons that most species can't even imagine. Senator Patricia Adams, who was on the Defense Committee, looked confused. But how does this help us? The aliens have thousands of ships. Our weapons are primitive compared to theirs. Martinez smiled grimly. Senator, you're thinking like a civilized person. The aliens are also thinking like civilized people. They expect us to surrender when we see their superior force. They don't understand that we're not civilized. Dr. Margaret Lewis, the military psychologist, had been reading the files. She looked up with wide eyes. General, are you suggesting we tell them about our history? Not just tell them, Doctor. Show them. Make them understand what they're dealing with. Martinez walked to the wall screen and brought up a map of the solar system. The alien ships were shown as red dots surrounding Earth. The aliens have conquered 1,000 worlds, Martinez said. But they've never faced a species like us. They've never met a species that invented nuclear weapons before they learned to live in peace. They've never encountered a species that has contingency plans to destroy their own planet. Contingency plans? President Hayes asked. Yes, sir. Protocol Omega. If Earth is about to be conquered, we destroy everything. We make the planet uninhabitable. We salt the Earth, poison the water, and irradiate the atmosphere. If we can't have Earth, nobody can. The room erupted in shocked voices. People were talking over each other, asking questions, expressing disbelief. Quiet, Martinez shouted. The room fell silent. This is not a debate. This is reality. We are not a normal species. We are the species that looked at the vacuum of space and said, we can weaponize that too. We are the species that has 15,000 nuclear weapons pointed at our own planet. Captain Rachel Stone had been quiet during the meeting. She commanded the stealth ship USS Harbinger, one of Earth's most advanced vessels. She was young, but she had seen combat in the Mars conflicts. General, she said, what exactly are you proposing? Martinez looked at her. Captain, I'm proposing we give the aliens a warning. Not a surrender, not a plea for mercy. A warning. We tell them exactly what they're dealing with. And what are we dealing with? A species that has spent its entire existence learning new ways to kill. A species that has weapons designed to destroy solar systems. A species that would rather die than be enslaved. Dr. Collins nodded slowly. The general is right. In all of human history, we've never had a period of global peace. We've always been at war with someone. We've always been developing new weapons. We've always been finding new ways to destroy our enemies. But surely other species have had wars, Senator Adams said. Yes, but not like ours, Collins replied. Other species had wars and then achieved peace. We've had wars and then had bigger wars. We've never stopped fighting. We've never stopped developing weapons. We've turned destruction into a science. Martinez brought up another screen. It showed human military capabilities. Nuclear weapons, biological weapons, chemical weapons, orbital bombardment systems, and things that were still classified. The aliens think they're dealing with a peaceful species that achieves space travel through cooperation, Martinez said. They need to understand that we achieved space travel through spite and stubbornness. We went to space because we wanted to weaponize it. President Hayes was quiet for a long moment. General, what you're suggesting is that we threaten them. No, sir. I'm suggesting we educate them. We show them our resume. We let them know what happens when you back a cornered animal. We make them understand we're not like other species. And if they don't care? Martinez looked at the president with cold eyes. Then we show them why we're the only species in the galaxy that has a plan to destroy our own star. The room went dead silent. Everyone stared at Martinez in shock. You're joking, whispered Defense Secretary Moore. I'm not joking. Project Helios, classified above top secret. If Earth is about to be conquered, we destabilize the sun. We take the entire solar system with us. Mutual assured destruction on a galactic scale. Dr. Lewis looked sick. That's insane. Yes, it is. That's the point. We're insane. We're the species that looked at their own star and said, we can turn that into a weapon too. We're the species that has backup plans for our backup plans, and all of them involve maximum destruction. Captain Stone was beginning to understand. You want to make them afraid of us. Not afraid, Captain. Respectful. We want them to understand that conquering Earth isn't worth the cost. We want them to know that we're not a normal species. We're the species that will burn down the house rather than let someone else live in it. Martinez sat down and looked around the room. Ladies and gentlemen, the aliens have given us an ultimatum. They expect us to surrender like every other species. They've conquered. But we're not every other species. We're humanity. We're the species that turned warfare into an art form. We're the species that has weapons other civilizations can't even imagine. So what do? President Hayes asked. We send them a message. Martinez replied. Not a surrender, not a plea, a warning. We tell them exactly what they're dealing with. We show them our history. We let them know what happens when you threaten the human race. And if they ignore the warning? Martinez smiled coldly. Then we show them why we're the only species in the galaxy that prefers mutual annihilation to slavery. The meeting continued for hours. Plans were made. Messages were prepared. The aliens thought they were dealing with a normal species. They were about to learn that humanity was anything but normal. In space, the alien fleet waited. They had given their ultimatum. In less than 48 hours, they expected humanity to surrender. They had done this thousands of times before, but they had never encountered a species like humanity. They had never met a species that had spent 10,000 years learning how to kill. They had never faced a species that would rather destroy themselves than be conquered. The aliens were about to receive an education about humanity, and it was going to be a lesson that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. Fleet Commander Vexthari stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the small blue planet below. Earth looked peaceful and beautiful. The planet's inhabitants had been given their ultimatum. In 24 hours, they would surrender, just like every other species the Empire had conquered. Vexthari had conquered 47 worlds for the Empire. It was always the same. The aliens would see the massive fleet, realize they were outmatched, and surrender. Some would try to negotiate. Others would beg for mercy. But they all surrendered in the end. Commander, his communications officer, said, "We're receiving a transmission from the planet." Vexthari smiled. "Already? They're surrendering early." "Put it through." The transmission began, but it wasn't what Vexthari expected. Instead of a surrender, it was a human voice speaking calmly and clearly. "To the fleet currently surrounding our planet, we are not surrendering. We are not negotiating. We are giving you a warning." Vexthari's smile faded. "A warning? These primitives are trying to warn us?" The human voice continued. "You think you know what you're dealing with. You think we're like every other species you've conquered. You're wrong. We are not a normal species. We are humanity. And we are unlike anything you have ever encountered." Then the data began to arrive. Videos, images, documents, and records. The aliens watched in growing confusion as humanity's history unfolded before them. Images of nuclear explosions that could destroy entire cities, chemical weapons that could kill millions, biological weapons that could wipe out entire continents. The aliens saw wars that had lasted for decades, conflicts that had consumed entire nations. "What is this?" Vexthari muttered, watching footage of human soldiers fighting with a ferocity that disturbed him. Captain Rachel Stone was aboard the USS Harbinger, Earth's most advanced stealth ship. She had volunteered to deliver humanity's message to the alien fleet. Her ship was hidden in the asteroid belt, transmitting the data directly to the alien ships. "This is Captain Rachel Stone of the United Earth Defense Force," she said into her microphone. "You are receiving humanity's historical record. This is not propaganda. This is not fiction. This is what we have done to ourselves over the past 10,000 years." The aliens watched footage of World War II, where humans had killed over 50 million of their own kind. They saw the atomic bombs dropped on Japanese cities. They watched chemical weapons being used in trenches. They saw concentration camps where humans had systematically murdered other humans. "My God," whispered Vexthari's science officer. "They did this to their own species?" But the data kept coming. The aliens saw the Cold War, where two human nations had pointed enough nuclear weapons at each other to destroy their entire planet. They saw proxy wars fought across the globe. They watched humans develop weapons that could kill everyone on Earth 12 times over. Dr. Kevin Walsh was at Earth Descent's command, monitoring the alien fleet's communications. He could hear their conversations, their growing confusion and concern. "Admiral Carter," he said, "they're talking to each other. They're confused. They've never seen anything like our history." Admiral Lisa Carter stood behind him, watching the screens. "What are they saying?" "They're trying to understand how we achieve space travel while still being so violent. They're wondering if the data is real or fake." Captain Stone continued her transmission. "You may be wondering if this data is accurate. It is. We are the species that invented nuclear weapons before we learned to live in peace. We are the species that created biological weapons before we cured cancer. We are the species that developed orbital bombardment before we built orbital habitats." The aliens saw footage of human conflicts in space. Ships ramming each other, explosions that destroyed entire stations, weapons that could crack moons in half. They watched humans fight over resources, territory, and ideologies with a brutality that shocked them. Every other species you have conquered achieved peace before they reached the stars, Stone continued. We are different. We achieved the stars through violence and stubbornness. We went to space because we wanted to weaponize it. Vexthari's tactical officer was analyzing the data. Commander, if this is accurate, these humans have weapons we've never seen before. They have devices that can destroy entire solar systems. That's impossible, Vexthari said. No species would create such weapons. But the data showed otherwise. The aliens saw Project Helios, humanity's plan to destabilize their own sun if Earth was about to be conquered. They saw plans for weapons that could create artificial black holes. They watched tests of devices that could crack planets in half. Dr. Margaret Lewis was in the psychology department, preparing her part of the message. She had studied human behavior for 30 years, and she understood what made humanity different from other species. This is Dr. Margaret Lewis, human behavioral psychologist, she said into the transmission. You need to understand what you're dealing with. We are not a rational species. We are not a peaceful species. We are the species that looks at certain death and chooses to take our enemies with us. The aliens watched footage of human suicide. Attacks, pilots crashing their planes into enemy ships. Soldiers detonating explosives while surrounded by enemies. Entire cities choosing to destroy themselves rather than be captured. We do not surrender, Lewis continued. We do not negotiate from a position of weakness. We do not accept slavery. We have a saying, give me liberty or give me death. Mean it literally. Commander Amy Brooks was watching the alien fleet from the moon. She could see their ships moving, changing formation. They were becoming more defensive, more cautious. Admiral, she called Earth, the aliens are repositioning. They're moving to a more defensive formation. Good, Admiral Carter replied. That means they're taking our message seriously. The transmission from Earth continued. The aliens were shown humanity's nuclear arsenal. 15,000 nuclear. Weapons enough to destroy Earth several times over. But more importantly, they were shown humanity's willingness to use them. We have pointed these weapons at our own planet, Stone explained. If we cannot have Earth, nobody can. We would rather destroy our world than let you enslave us. Vexthari was beginning to understand. They're insane. They would actually destroy their own planet? His science officer nodded grimly. Commander, the data shows they've done it before on a smaller scale. They've destroyed their own cities, their own people, their own resources, rather than let enemies take them. The aliens were shown footage of scorched earth tactics. Humans burning their own crops, poisoning their own water, destroying their own infrastructure, rather than let enemies use it. They saw entire populations choosing death over occupation. We are not like other species, Dr. Lewis continued. Other species value survival above all else. We value freedom above survival. We would rather die free than live as slaves. The transmission showed humanity's contingency plans. If Earth was invaded, they would poison the atmosphere. If they were conquered, they would destroy the planet's ecosystem. If they were enslaved, they would make the planet uninhabitable. You think you can conquer us like you conquered other species, Stone said. You cannot. We are not other species. We are humanity. We are the species that has spent 10,000 years learning new ways to kill. We are the species that has weapons you cannot imagine. The aliens were shown humanity's most classified weapons. Devices that could manipulate gravity. Weapons that could create miniature black holes. Bombs that could ignite entire atmospheres. The technology was crude compared to the Empire's, but it was effective and terrifying. We have 15,000 nuclear weapons pointed at our own planet, Stone continued. We have biological weapons that could kill every living thing on Earth. We have chemical weapons that could poison the air, the water, and the soil. And we will use them all before we surrender. Vexthari was talking frantically with his fleet commanders. Have you ever seen anything like this? A species that would destroy itself rather than surrender? Never, Commander, his second-in-command replied. Every species we've conquered has valued survival. These humans seem to value something else more. The transmission entered its final phase. The aliens were shown humanity's ultimate message, a declaration of intent that would echo across the galaxy. We are not surrendering, Stone said clearly. We are not negotiating. We are giving you one chance to leave our system peacefully. If you attack us, we will respond with everything we have. We will make this the most expensive conquest in your history. The aliens watched as Earth's defense forces took position. Human ships that looked primitive, but moved with purpose. Space stations that seemed weak, but bristled with weapons. Ground forces that appeared small, but fought with desperate courage. We know we cannot defeat you in a fair fight, Stone continued. But we are not planning to fight fair. We are planning to fight like humans. We will use every dirty trick, every cruel weapon, every desperate tactic we have learned in 10,000 years of warfare. The transmission ended with a simple statement that chilled the alien fleet to their core. We are humanity. We do not surrender. We do not negotiate with conquerors. We do not accept slavery. Leave our system now, or learn why we are the only species in the galaxy that has a plan to destroy our own star. The alien fleet was silent. They had received humanity's message. Fleet Commander Vexthari stood on his bridge, staring at the human transmission. His officers waited for orders, but he was lost in thought. In 47 conquests, he had never seen anything like this. Every other species had tried to negotiate or surrender. These humans had sent a warning. Commander, his tactical officer said quietly, the High Command is requesting your status report. Vexthari looked at his crew. They all seemed disturbed by what they had seen. The human data had shown them things they couldn't unsee. A species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing. Tell High Command we are proceeding with the invasion, Vexthari said finally. These humans are trying to scare. Use with their primitive weapons. They cannot resist the Empire. But even as he said it, Vexthari wasn't sure he believed it. The humans had shown them something no other species had ever possessed. Complete willingness to die rather than surrender. Begin the assault, he ordered. Target their orbital defenses first. Captain Jake Morrison was still in his fighter, now part of Earth's defensive line. He had volunteered to stay in space when the other patrol ships were called back. Someone had to watch the alien fleet and report their movements. All ships, this is Morrison, he said into his radio. The alien fleet is moving. They're starting their attack. The alien ships were massive and beautiful, moving through space like deadly dancers. Their weapons charged with energy that made. The stars looked dim. Morrison had never seen anything so terrifying and magnificent at the same time. Morrison, this is Admiral Carter. Fall back to defensive position. Negative, Admiral. Someone needs to stay out here and watch them. Besides, if they want to start a fight, let's give them one they'll remember. Morrison turned his small fighter toward the alien fleet. He knew it was suicide, but he also knew something the aliens didn't understand. Humans didn't run from fights they couldn't win. They fought anyway, and they made the enemy pay for every inch. The first alien ship to approach Earth's orbital defenses was a massive cruiser, 3 miles long and armed with weapons that could destroy cities. It moved slowly, confidently, expecting the human defenses to collapse at the first show of force. Instead, the human defense platforms opened fire with everything they had. Nuclear missiles, railguns, particle beams, and weapons the aliens had never seen before. The cruiser's shields held, but the intensity of the human response surprised them. "They're not surrendering," the cruiser's captain reported to Vexthari. "They're fighting back with everything they have." Morrison dove his fighter between the alien ships, firing his weapons at point-blank range. His missiles barely scratched their shields, but that wasn't the point. The point was to show them that humans didn't back down. "You want Earth?" Morrison shouted over the radio, knowing the aliens could hear him. "Come and take it." An alien fighter moved to intercept Morrison. It was faster, better armed, and more advanced in every way. But Morrison had something the alien pilot didn't have: 10,000 years of human military experience bred into his DNA. Morrison waited until the alien fighter was close. Then he did something no rational pilot would do. He rammed his ship into the alien fighter, detonating his nuclear reactor in a suicide attack that destroyed both ships. The explosion was visible from Earth, a brief star that flared and died. But the message was clear: humans would rather die fighting than live as slaves. Admiral Carter watched the battle from Earth's orbital command center. Morrison's sacrifice had bought them precious seconds, but the alien fleet was advancing. Her ships were outnumbered 1,000 to 1. "All ships, this is Admiral Carter. Execute Protocol Delta." Protocol Delta was humanity's response to overwhelming odds. If they couldn't win, they would make the enemy pay so dearly that the victory would be meaningless. Every human ship was equipped with self-destruct charges. Every station had nuclear weapons pointed at its own structure. The USS Defiant, commanded by Captain Steve Richards, was the first to engage the alien fleet directly. The ship was old, built for fighting other humans, but it had been modified with every weapon Earth could provide. "This is Captain Richards to all ships. Remember what we're fighting for. Remember who we are. We are humans. We don't surrender." The Defiant charged directly at the alien fleet, its weapons firing continuously. The ship took massive damage, its hull cracking under alien fire, but it kept moving forward. "Sir, we're losing power," Richards' engineer reported. "Hull breaches on all decks." "We can't take much more." "Then we don't need to," Richards replied. "All hands, prepare for ramming speed. Set the reactor to overload." The Defiant accelerated toward the largest alien ship, its crew singing old battle songs as they prepared to die. The ship struck the alien vessel at full speed, its nuclear reactor exploding in a blast that crippled 3 alien ships. The aliens were shocked. They had never seen anything like this. The humans were actually ramming their ships, choosing mutual destruction over surrender. "Commander," Vexthari's science officer said, "we're receiving reports from all fronts. The humans are not fighting to win. They're fighting to inflict maximum damage before they die." On Earth's surface, the alien ground forces were having their own problems. General Kethmer had landed with 1 million soldiers, expecting to occupy a planet full of frightened civilians. Instead, he found a population that had turned their entire world into a weapon. Dan Cooper commanded a regiment of human soldiers in what used to be New York City. The city had been evacuated, but the humans had left behind surprises for the aliens. "Remember, boys," Cooper told his men, "we're not here to win. We're here to make them pay for every building, every street, every block. Make them remember that humans don't go quietly." The aliens entered the city expecting to find civilians hiding in buildings. Instead, they found a city that had been turned into a massive trap. Buildings were rigged with explosives. Streets were mined. Every corner could hide a human soldier with a weapon. Cooper watched the aliens advance through his binoculars. They moved carefully, professionally, like the experienced soldiers they were. But they had never fought humans before. They didn't understand what they were walking into. Now, Cooper said into his radio, the city exploded. Not all at once, but in a carefully planned sequence that caught the aliens in a series of traps. Buildings collapsed on them. Streets opened up into pits filled with spikes. Hidden weapons fired from every direction. The aliens took heavy casualties, but they kept advancing. They had superior numbers and better weapons. But for every block they took, they paid in blood. "Sir," one of Cooper's sergeants said, "we're running out of ammunition." "Then we used the backup plan," Cooper replied. He pulled out a small device, a nuclear mine buried beneath the city. "If we can't stop them, we deny them the prize." Cooper pressed the button. The explosion vaporized 10 city blocks, killing thousands of aliens and every human in the area. The aliens had taken the city, but there was nothing left to take. Dr. Kevin Walsh was monitoring alien communications from his bunker. He could hear their growing confusion and concern. The humans were fighting like no species they had ever encountered. "Admiral Carter," he reported, "the aliens are talking to each other. They're confused. They expected us to surrender after losing a few battles. Instead, we're fighting harder." "What are they saying?" "They're calling us insane. They can't understand why we're destroying our own cities rather than let them take them intact." Admiral Carter nodded grimly. "Good. Fear is a weapon too." In space, Commander Amy Brooks was preparing to execute the final phase of Earth's defense. From her lunar command post, she could see the alien fleet advancing on Earth. Human ships were dying by the dozens, but each one took aliens with them. "Admiral, this is Brooks. We're ready to execute Protocol Omega." Protocol Omega was humanity's final option. If Earth was about to fall, they would destroy everything rather than let the aliens have it. Nuclear weapons hidden around the planet would detonate simultaneously, poisoning the atmosphere and making the planet uninhabitable. "Not yet, Commander. We're not finished fighting." Major Tony Richards was commanding Earth's hidden lunar installations. The aliens didn't know about these bases, hidden on the dark side of the moon. From here, he could launch attacks on the alien fleet without warning. "All batteries. This is Richards. Target the alien command ships. Fire everything we have." The lunar bases opened fire with weapons the aliens had never seen before. Kinetic bombardment weapons that fired chunks of metal at incredible speeds. Nuclear missiles with guidance systems that could track targets across the solar system. Energy. Weapons that had been built in secret for decades. The alien flagship took multiple hits, its shields failing under the surprise attack. Vextari was thrown to the floor as his ship shook under the bombardment. "Where did that come from?" he demanded. "The human moon, Commander. They have hidden bases there." Vextari realized with growing horror that the humans had been planning for this kind of war for decades. They had weapons and bases scattered throughout their solar system. They had turned their entire star system into a fortress. Back on Earth, the battle was reaching its climax. The aliens had taken several cities, but each victory cost them more than the last. The humans were making them pay for every inch of ground. Dr. Margaret Lewis was in the deep blue. Supreme Admiral Zarthis sat in the Empire's high command chamber, 3 star systems away from Earth. The reports coming from the human system were unlike anything in the Empire's 1,000-year history. An entire fleet was being held back by a single primitive planet. "Explain to me again how Fleet Commander Vextari has lost over 400 ships to these humans," Zarthis said coldly. General Morden, the Empire's military strategist, looked uncomfortable. "Supreme Admiral, the humans are not fighting like any species we've encountered before. They appear to prefer death to surrender. That's impossible. All intelligent species value survival above all else." "Not these humans, sir. We've watched them destroy their own cities rather than let us occupy them. They've crashed their ships into ours in suicide attacks. They've detonated nuclear weapons in their own territory just to kill our soldiers. Zarthis reviewed the battle. Reports with growing disbelief. The humans had turned their entire planet into a weapon. Every city was a trap. Every building could explode. Every human soldier fought until death, and many chose to die in ways that would take aliens with them. What does Commander Vexthari recommend? He's requesting permission to use planet destroyer weapons, sir. He says conventional conquest is impossible. Planet destroyers? For one primitive world? Sir, the humans have made it clear they would. Rather destroy their planet than let us have it. Commander Vexthari believes they're serious about this threat. Back at Earth, Fleet Commander Vexthari was learning exactly how serious the humans were. His latest assault on the planet had been repelled with massive losses. The humans had somehow managed to turn their entire moon into a weapons platform. Commander, his science officer reported, we're detecting massive energy buildups across the human system. They appear to be preparing something. What kind of energy buildups? Unknown, sir. But the readings are off our scales. Whatever they're planning, it's going to be big. Captain Ellen Murphy's replacement, Commander Rick Barnes, was coordinating Earth's final defense from the remaining orbital platforms. The aliens had destroyed most of Earth's space defenses, but the humans had one last surprise. All stations. This is Barnes. Initiate Project Helios. Make them understand what humans do when they have nothing left to lose. Deep beneath the Earth's surface, in bunkers that had been built in secret for decades, humanity's most terrible weapon was coming online. Project Helios was not designed to destroy the alien fleet. It was designed to destroy the Sun. Dr. Peter Collins was one of the few people who knew the full details of Project Helios. He had helped design it 30 years ago, never believing it would actually be used. General Martinez, he said quietly, are we really going to do this? Martinez looked at the activation codes in his hand. Doctor, the aliens have given us two choices, slavery or death. We choose death. But we're taking them with us. Sir, if we destabilize the sun, it will destroy everything in the solar system. Every planet, every ship, every living thing. I know. But it will also send a message to the Empire that will echo across the galaxy. The message that some species cannot be conquered because they refuse to be conquered. Captain Rachel Stone was still aboard the USS Harbinger, hidden in the asteroid belt. She had been chosen to deliver humanity's final message to the alien fleet. Alien ships, she broadcast, this is your final warning. We have activated Project Helios. In 30 minutes, we will destabilize our sun. The resulting explosion will destroy everything in this solar system, including your fleet. Vexthari received the message with growing horror. They're bluffing. No species would destroy their own star. But his science officer was already confirming the readings. Commander, massive energy discharges are being directed at their sun from hidden installations throughout the system. The stellar readings are becoming unstable. Can they actually do it? Sir, if they continue this bombardment, the sun will go nova in approximately 28 minutes. Everything in this system will be destroyed. For the first time in his military career, Vexthari felt real fear. The humans weren't bluffing. They were actually going to destroy their own star rather than be conquered. General Martinez was in the deepest bunker on Earth, his hand on the final activation switch. Around him, the surviving leaders of humanity waited in silence. Sir, President? Hayes said quietly, there has to be another way. Mr. President, we tried to warn them. We showed them what we were. They chose not to listen. Now they'll learn the final lesson about humanity. Dr. Margaret Lewis was monitoring the alien communications. General, the aliens are in panic. They're trying to contact their high command. They're begging for instructions. Let them panic. Let them understand. that some species would rather burn down the universe than live on their knees. The stellar bombardment continued. Humanity's hidden weapons fired streams of exotic particles at the sun, destabilizing the nuclear reactions. At its core, the star began to fluctuate, its light growing brighter and more erratic. Commander, Amy Brooks was watching from the moon as Earth's sun began to die. Admiral Carter, stellar instability is increasing. We have maybe 20 minutes before the sun goes nova. Understood, Commander? All human ships begin emergency evacuation procedures. If any of us survive the next hour, we'll rebuild somewhere else. But there would be nowhere to rebuild. The explosion would be visible from 1,000 light-years away. It would be humanity's funeral pyre and their final message to the galaxy. Supreme Admiral Zarthis received Vex Tharis emergency transmission with disbelief. They're doing what? Sir, the humans are destroying their own star. Our entire fleet will be lost if we don't retreat immediately. This is madness. No rational species would commit suicide on such a scale. Sir, respectfully, the humans are not rational. They've proven that throughout this conflict. They would rather die than be enslaved. Zarthis looked at the strategic display. The human system was about to become a grave for both species. Fleet Commander, you have permission to withdraw. Emergency jump immediately. The alien fleet began to retreat, but not all of them would make it. The sun was becoming increasingly unstable, and hyperspace jumps near a dying star were dangerous. Vex Thari watched his ships fleeing as fast as they could. Many wouldn't escape in time. The humans had turned their own solar system into the largest weapon in galactic history. Sir, his communications officer said, we're receiving one final transmission from the planet. Captain Stone's voice came through clearly, even as the sun began to flare behind her. This is humanity's final message to the Empire. We told you what we were. We warned you that we were different. You chose not to listen. The transmission continued as the sun grew brighter and more unstable. We are not surrendering. We are not negotiating. We are showing you what happens when you threaten the human race. Remember this moment. Remember that some species cannot be conquered because they refuse to be conquered. The sun exploded. The nova was visible across the galaxy, a brilliant star that flared and died, taking the entire solar system with it. Earth, Mars, the alien fleet, and everything else in the system was vaporized in an instant. But the message survived. Supreme Admiral Zarthis received the final data transmission from Vex Tharius' flagship just before it was destroyed. The humans had actually done it. They had destroyed their own star rather than surrender. Change our species' classification of humans, Zarthis ordered quietly. Mark them as extinct, but add a warning for any future encounters with similar species. What should the warning say, sir? Zarthis looked at the tactical display where the human system used to be. Now there was only empty space and the fading glow of a dead star. Species classification. Avoid. Potential for mutual annihilation. Absolute. Recommend quarantine protocols for any species showing similar psychological profiles. The news spread across the Empire quickly. A primitive species had destroyed an entire fleet by committing suicide on a stellar scale. It was unprecedented. It was terrifying. It was a lesson that the Empire would never forget. Other alien civilizations heard the story and trembled. There was a species called humanity that had preferred death to slavery. They had turned their own star into a weapon rather than surrender. The story became a warning told across the galaxy. Years later, when other species made contact with the ruins of the human system, they found monuments left by other aliens. Warning beacons that told the story of humanity's final choice. Memorials to the species that had taught the galaxy a lesson about freedom The Empire never attempted to conquer another species like humanity. They developed tests to identify civilizations that might choose mutual destruction over surrender. When they found such species, they avoided them completely. Humanity was gone, but their legacy lived on. They had proven that some species could not be conquered because they refused to be conquered. They had shown the galaxy that freedom was worth any price, even the ultimate price dot, and in the depths of space. The warning spread from species to species. Beware of any civilization that achieves space travel through war. They are not rational. They do not surrender. They will destroy themselves before they become your slaves. The Empire had come to Earth expecting an easy conquest. Instead, they had received an education about the price of freedom that would echo across the galaxy. For Ethausa,